In the quiet folds of forgotten time, where stories breathe like whispers through the veils of memory, there exists a realm known as the other world. It is not distant, though hidden, not unreachable, though veiled in the delicate shimmer of enchantment. Imagine a land where the air is heavy with the perfume of wild blossoms that never wither, where rivers hum with songs too delicate for mortal tongues, and where the horizon glows with the eternal twilight of dream. This is no kingdom carved by hands of men, but a tapestry woven of longing and eternity. It is here, amidst silver mists and shifting skies, that the myth of Rhiannon is born. The other world is not merely a place, it is sensation itself. Each step through its meadows awakens the skin as if kissed by invisible lips of wind. Each glance at its skies leaves the heart trembling with awe, for the heavens ripple with colors that bleed like silk, glowing faintly with the pulse of unseen stars. The very air hums with secrets, with the breath of ancient deities, with a promise of beauty that will never fade. To enter such a realm is to surrender one's certainty, to drift willingly into a dream where desire and destiny entwine like lovers in the night. And within this realm of shimmer and silence she rides, Rhiannon. Her name carries the resonance of a bell at dawn, clear, delicate, yet impossible to ignore. She is no ordinary woman, nor even a simple goddess. She is the embodiment of longing, clothed in the grace of mystery itself. Legends say she glides across the meadows upon a white horse so radiant it seems carved from moonlight, hooves touching the earth without a sound, as though the world itself bows beneath her passage. Those who glimpse her do not merely see her, they are undone by her presence. It disarms reason, bending time, drowning thought in a tide of wonder. Her hair is said to cascade like rivers of gold, but not the harsh gleam of sun, rather the softened gold of autumn dusk, when every strand whispers of warmth and farewell. Her eyes are deep, liquid pools, shimmering with secrets no mortal tongue could shape, eyes that promise both comfort and ruin. To behold Rhiannon is to confront the edge of longing itself, to understand beauty not as an ornament, but as a force that consumes. In the mortal realm, men dream of power, of conquest, of the fragile security of crowns. Yet when she appears at the edges of their vision, such ambitions crumble. For Rhiannon is not a jewel to be possessed, but a horizon forever receding, a flame that tempts the moth, knowing it will burn. She is both invitation and warning, tenderness and storm, and still hearts reach for her again and again, despite the certainty of ruin. Some say she is a goddess of sovereignty, riding forth from the other world to offer not her love, but her choosing. Others whisper that she is a test, a dream sent to unravel men's illusions, leaving them trembling in the naked truth of their own desires. But all agree that to encounter Rhiannon
is to be transformed. No soul remains untouched, no heart leaves whole. Imagine her entrance, a white horse emerging from folds of twilight mist, her figure seated effortlessly upon its back, tall and luminous, her gown trailing like a cloud that clings to her skin with gentle caress. She does not gallop, nor does she rush. Instead, she moves with impossible patience, as though time itself bends to her will. Those who chase her may exhaust themselves, yet never draw nearer, for she is both here and elsewhere, a vision half of earth and half of dream. And still they run, driven by desire, compelled by the aching promise that perhaps, just perhaps, she will turn her head, meet their gaze, and acknowledge their yearning. But Rhiannon does not yield easily. Her allure is not in the gift of herself, but in the mystery of her distance. She is the echo that lingers after the song has ended, the scent of blossoms carried by the wind long after the flowers are gone. She does not belong to the hands that reach, nor to the voices that call, for she is born of the other world, a realm beyond possession, beyond control. And yet, what makes her story eternal is not merely her beauty, but the tension it awakens, desire and awe, yearning and reverence, the fragile line between worship and love. For Rhiannon is not carved of cold perfection. She is alive with warmth, with sensual presence, with a femininity that is both soft and unyielding. To speak of her is to speak of silk sliding across bare skin, of the sudden hush that falls before a kiss, of the tremor that lingers when one's breath brushes too close to another's lips. She is not only seen, she is felt in the marrow, in the blood, in the secret places of the soul.
Her myth begins not with a battle, nor with thunderous proclamations of gods, but with a ride. A simple ride across the horizon, witnessed by mortal eyes that cannot look away. And in that image lies the seed of all that follows, the pursuit, the desire, the longing that will shape her destiny, and that of those who dare to chase her. For myths do not always roar with violence. Sometimes they whisper with longing, with the irresistible pool of beauty that asks for nothing yet takes everything. Thus, the tale of Rhiannon does not begin with conquest, but with a vision. She is a mystery on horseback, moving with serene patience through the veil between worlds. Her presence alone is enough to bind the heart of any who see her, to weave threads of fate, invisible yet unbreakable. Even before words are spoken, before promises are made, the listener is ensnared, compelled to lean closer, to follow wherever the story leads. For such is the power of Rhiannon. She does not demand attention, she becomes it. And as the mists of the other world curl around her like adoring arms, as the moonlight clings to her gown as if reluctant to let go, one truth becomes certain. To know Rhiannon is to step willingly into a dream from which one may never awaken. The myth begins here, in the shimmer of twilight, in the quiet breath of mystery. It begins with her horse's silent hooves upon enchanted soil, with her gaze turned toward horizons no mortal can fathom, her beauty poised between tenderness and distance. It begins with the moment where desire is born, delicate yet unyielding, a seed that will root itself in the heart of any who dare to listen. And so, the story of Rhiannon opens like a dream, the kind of dream one does not wish to end, the kind that lingers in the skin like the memory of a lover's touch. She is the whisper at the edge of sleep, the shimmer that dances when eyes are closed, the ache that remains when morning comes. This is her introduction, a vision, a longing, a goddess in motion. She is Rhiannon, and she is unforgettable.
In the hush that follows her apparition, when the silver hooves of her horse no longer stir the air, but leave only the memory of motion, the tale draws its breath and turns toward those who will shape its heart. For myths are never woven from gods alone, nor from mortals in isolation, but from the spaces between them, the trembling bridges where longing crosses into fate. And so the story gives us first its central figure, Rhiannon. To speak her name is to summon grace. She is not carved in the harsh lines of dominion, nor draped in the heavy trappings of authority. Instead, her power is soft, yet undeniable, like the tide that caresses the shore with such tenderness one forgets it is also what shapes the cliffs. She is the kind of beauty that unsettles as much as it delights. A face not merely symmetrical, but luminous, animated by something deeper, something impossible to capture in words. Her every gesture flows as though guided by hidden music. When she tilts her head, the world itself seems to pause, as if listening for her unspoken thought. Rhiannon is sensual not because she tries to be, but because her very existence blurs the boundaries between mortal and divine, between dream and flesh. To look upon her is to feel warmth on the skin, as though her nearness awakens the body to its own longings. And yet within that sensuality lies distance. She is not easily touched, not easily claimed. The grace that adorns her is also her shield, her beauty both blessing and burden. For while it elevates her to the realm of the extraordinary, it also isolates her, casting her apart from those who would dare to love her not as a goddess, but as a woman. But Rhiannon is not without agency. Legends say she does not drift passively through her fate, waiting for the hand of a man or the decree of a god. She chooses, she speaks, she moves with deliberation, and her decisions, whether tender or cruel, shift the currents of destiny itself. This duality of warmth and will, allure and authority, defines her, making her a figure who cannot be reduced to ornamentation. She is not the prize of the tale, but its pulse. Opposite her, like flame to her shadow, stands Pwyll,
A mortal king, sovereign of Dyfed. His name means wisdom, though wisdom alone cannot shield him from the stirrings of his own heart. Pwyll is not a man of divine origins, nor a hero forged in impossible labors. He is human, achingly human in his desires, his mistakes, his persistence.
And it is precisely this humanity that draws the listener to him, for it reflects our own. He sees Rhiannon, and in that instant all the treasures of his realm, all the weight of his crown, all the ambitions of rule fade to ash beside the fire of his longing. For Pwyll, Rhiannon is not merely beautiful, she is revelation. She is the answer to a question he had not known how to ask, the embodiment of a yearning he had not dared to name. And so, when she rides before him, just beyond reach, he does what mortals do when confronted with the divine. He pursues, not with calculation, not with certainty, but with the trembling urgency of a heart that believes it has glimpsed the one truth worth chasing. Yet in his pursuit lies his fragility. For how does a man grasp what is woven of mist and moonlight? How does a mortal claim the love of one who seems beyond the reach of death and time? His journey will not only test his persistence, but also his humility, his capacity to honor the freedom of the one he desires. It is not enough to want Rhiannon. He must learn how to love her without diminishing her, how to stand beside her without casting shadow upon her light. Between them, the tension hums like the taut string of a harp, divine freedom against mortal devotion, her grace against his determination, her elusiveness against his longing. It is in this space, this fragile balance, that their story breathes. But myths rarely unfold in solitude. Around Rhiannon and Pwyll move figures who embody the forces that test their bond. Among them are her attendants, women of the other world who echo her grace, yet magnify her difference. They are shadows of her radiance, reminders that she is not alone, that she belongs to a realm greater than any mortal king can comprehend. These attendants are loyal, yet silent, their presence a veil between Rhiannon and those who would reach her. And beyond them, darker threads weave. For no tale of desire is without envy, no myth of beauty without slander. There is a rival in the shadows, one who watches with narrowed eyes, who whispers with venom, who will twist truth into lies. This figure, whether given a name or left as the embodiment of malice, stands as the counterpoint to Rhiannon's purity, the voice of the world that punishes women who shine too brightly, who love too freely. It is through such rivalry that her burden deepens, and through such lies that her suffering will later be born.
Thus the cast assembles, Rhiannon, luminous, yet bound by her own mystery. Pwyll, ardent, yet flawed, chasing a vision that both humbles and consumes him. Her attendants, echoes of the other world's silence, and the rival, a serpent among blossoms, waiting for the moment to strike. The contrasts between them form the spine of the tale. Rhiannon's freedom is set against Pwyll's duty, her ethereal allure against his earthly desire. Where she embodies choice, he embodies pursuit. Where she moves with patience, he rushes with hunger. And yet, it is in these contrasts that the alchemy of their connection begins. For longing is born not from sameness, but from difference. Difference that promises union, difference that whispers of completion. and so the listener is drawn closer, caught between admiration and apprehension. Will Pwyll prove worthy of the vision he pursues? Will Rhiannon, radiant and elusive, allow herself to be loved not as a symbol, but as a woman? Will the rival's venom succeed in corrupting their fragile bond? These questions pulse beneath the surface, making the tale not just one of myth, but one of intimacy, desire, and the human hunger for connection. For in the end, what makes these characters unforgettable is not their crowns nor their supernatural gifts, but their hearts laid bare in longing. Rhiannon's grace, Pwyll's devotion, the rival's envy, they are mirrors of the same truth, that love, whether divine or mortal, is never simple, never without cost. Thus the stage is set. The other world breathes around them, its mist curling like silk, its air trembling with possibility. She, the goddess-like woman who cannot be possessed. He, the mortal king who dares to desire her. And they, the shadows who will test, challenge, and betray. The story waits, suspended in the hush between heartbeats. The characters stand poised, each carrying within them the seeds of longing, of conflict, of ecstasy and sorrow. And as the listener leans in, drawn by the pulse of beauty and the ache of desire, the myth whispers its promise. What begins as a vision will soon become a fire. For Rhiannon is not merely to be seen, she is to be pursued, to be misunderstood, to be adored, and to be betrayed. And Pwyll, poor mortal king, has already stepped across the threshold where destiny waits. Their story, sensual and sorrowful, luminous and cruel, has only just begun. When Rhiannon first chose Pwyll, the otherworld itself seemed to pause in astonishment. For she was not bound to the whims of mortal men, nor to the cages of their kingdoms. She could have remained forever untouchable, a vision gliding across silver meadows, adored yet unclaimed. And yet she descended from her realm of dream and mist, not compelled, but choosing. To her, love was not surrender, it was sovereignty. In choosing him, she declared a defiance that her heart would not be dictated by lineage, nor by expectation, but by the quiet tremor of desire that stirred within her. But with choice came consequence. Rhiannon's beauty had always been her burden, a gift so radiant that it burned the eyes of envy. When she appeared beside Pwyll, no longer a distant vision, but a woman seated at his side, whispers began to coil like serpents through the halls of Dyved. Was she a blessing, or was she a spell? Was her love genuine, or a trick of the other world? They called her too perfect, too graceful, too free, and in their words lurked suspicion. For mortals distrust what they cannot control, and Rhiannon was the very embodiment of untamed grace. Yet Pwyll did not waver. His gaze upon her was that of a man who had glimpsed something greater than himself, and for that he was both exalted and condemned.
For to desire Rhiannon was to desire more than a woman. It was to reach beyond mortal limits, to invite both wonder and ruin. His devotion was absolute, and yet beneath its fire there trembled the fragility of all human love, the fear of losing, the fear of not being enough. Between them, desire pulsed like a living thing. It was not the crude hunger of possession, nor the fleeting spark of lust, though both lingered in the shadows of their glances. No. Their desire was more profound, an ache that went beyond flesh, that lived in silence, in the brush of a hand, in the gravity of eyes that lingered too long. It was the kind of longing that consumes quietly, the kind that reshapes the soul. To see them together was to watch two worlds collide, her divinity shimmering against his humanity, her serenity against his ardent hunger. And yet, every closeness carried with it the seed of distance. Rhiannon was radiant, but also elusive. She moved through the world as though she belonged to it, and yet was never fully contained by it. To Pwyll, she was a treasure, but to others, she was an interloper, a woman too strange, too sovereign, too unwilling to bend to the roles expected of queens. In her refusal to be silent, in her insistence on speaking her mind, she provoked not only admiration, but resentment.
And resentment is a fertile ground for betrayal. The rival, whose whispers carried like poison in the dark, found fertile soil in the doubts of others. She is not what she seems, the whispers said. She is dangerous, she is untrustworthy, she is not ours. Soon, envy bloomed into rumor, rumor into judgment, judgment into a chorus that hummed beneath every banquet, every gathering. Rhiannon, who had chosen with her own heart, was suddenly judged by the standards of a world that could not comprehend her. Still, she endured. Her beauty did not wane, her voice did not falter, her love for Pwyll did not wither. She stood tall, her presence both tender and unyielding, and in that balance lay her sensuality. For Rhiannon's allure was never merely in the curve of her form or the shimmer of her hair. It was in the strength with which she carried her vulnerability, the quiet defiance in her gaze, the way she bore judgment like a queen who knows her worth. But the world demanded more of her, always more. As Queen of Dyfed, she was expected not only to be beautiful, not only to be loyal, but to give heirs, to give silence, to give herself without question. And here lay the deepest root of her conflict. Her longing was not merely for love, not merely for desire, but for recognition, for the right to be seen not only as ornament, but as soul. For Rhiannon longed for truth, and truth in a world of envy is a dangerous thing. Her love for Pwyll was real, a flame she carried with dignity, even as it singed her own skin. Their nights were filled with closeness, with the sensual intimacy of two who discover each other in fragments, the curve of a shoulder, the heat of a breath, the trembling pause before lips meet. But even in the softness of their embrace, there was fragility. She knew he adored her, yet she also felt the weight of his fear, the doubt that flickered behind his eyes when the whispers of scandal grew louder. Could love alone silence a kingdom? Could devotion withstand the venom of envy? The answer trembled,
uncertain in every touch.
And as the seasons turned, so too did the eyes of the world. Murmurs of expectation pressed against her skin like invisible chains. When would she bear a child? When would she fulfill the role they demanded of her? Rhiannon, who had always been free, found herself pressed into the narrow corridors of duty. Her body, once hers alone, became the vessel upon which an entire kingdom projected its hunger. And though she bore this with dignity, though she carried herself with the poise of one who will not break, within her heart flickered both sorrow and defiance. For desire is not only to be loved, desire is also to be understood. In Pull's arms she was cherished, but in the court's eyes she was judged. In the rival's whispers she was condemned, and in the mirror of her own reflection she was torn between the woman she had chosen to be and the role the world demanded of her. This was her truest conflict. Not only the envy that circled her like vultures, not only the lies that threatened to strangle her name, but the eternal tension between freedom and duty, between truth and judgment, between longing and restraint. And yet, even within this storm, she remained luminous, for Rhiannon's allure was never diminished by hardship. If anything, the envy of others deepened her radiance, the slanders of rivals sharpened her dignity. Like a flame tested by wind, she only burned brighter, her sensual presence not erased by conflict, but etched more deeply into the memory of those who beheld her. And Pull, for all his devotion, for all his trembling desire, stood beside her, caught between awe and uncertainty. He longed to protect her, yet knew he could not shield her from the world's judgment. He adored her, yet feared he might fail her. He loved her as a man loves a woman, but he struggled to understand how to love a goddess who demanded not chains, but recognition. Thus their bond grew fragile, like glass, luminous, delicate, but always at risk of shattering. And through that fragility pulsed the deepest truth of their desire. It was never simple, never easy, never safe, but it was real. Theirs was the desire of fleeting passion, nor the comfort of easy love. It was the kind of desire that bruises the soul, that tests the spirit, that binds two beings not in certainty, but in risk. It was love not only of body, but of essence, of fire, of truth. And it is this love, so beautiful, so perilous, that would soon be tested by betrayal greater than whispers, by judgments harsher than rumor, by trials that would carve their names forever into myth. For desire, when bound to truth, becomes a force no world can ignore. And in Rhiannon's heart desire burned like a star, not for possession, not for perfection, but for freedom, for recognition, for love that sees her not as dream, but as woman. There are moments in myths when the world turns cruel, when beauty and love are not enough to shield the innocent, and when envy sharpens itself into a blade. For Rhiannon, that moment came with the birth of her child. The kingdom of Dyfed, restless with whispers, had pressed its weight upon her womb. She was no longer seen only as a queen or as a woman, but as the vessel of their future, the guarantor of lineage, the bearer of heirs. And when at last she delivered her son, the air of judgment grew heavier still. For where joy should have blossomed, envy crept instead, searching for weakness, for any shadow in which to cast doubt upon her. One night, as the fire dimmed and silence cloaked the halls, tragedy struck. The child vanished from his cradle, stolen in darkness by forces unseen. Whether it was the work of envious hands or a twist of fate more sinister, the truth lay hidden. Yet when the dawn came and the cradle was found empty, the court did not search for answers. They searched for blame, and their eyes turned to her. The whispers that had long coiled like smoke burst into flame. It was she, they murmured, their voices dripping with malice. She has devoured her own child. She, strange and otherworldly, has feasted upon the life she was meant to protect. It was an accusation so grotesque, so monstrous, that it should have shattered under the weight of its own impossibility. But envy does not require reason. It requires only hunger. And so the court, blinded by suspicion, condemned her. Rhiannon, radiant, sovereign, untouchable, was suddenly marked as mother, betrayer, beast. The punishment was swift and merciless. She, who once rode a white horse that glided like moonlight across meadows, was forced to kneel upon the soil and carry strangers upon her back. Like an animal of burden, she was made to bear them at the gates of her own hall, their laughter sharp, their hands heavy. She who once was a vision of freedom was tethered, debased, humiliated. And yet, she did not break.
Picture her there, Rhiannon, kneeling, her gown torn and trailing in the dust, her body bent beneath the weight of men and women who mounted her with cruelty. Her hair, once flowing like rivers of dusk, tangled in the wind. Her back, once arched in grace upon her moonlit steed, now bowed beneath mockery. And yet, even in her abasement, she was luminous. Her lips pressed together, not in defeat, but in endurance. Her gaze, lowered yet burning, carried dignity no cruelty could erase. There was a terrible beauty in her suffering, a sensual fragility that made those who watched unable to look away. She bore her punishment not with rage, but with a strange grace, as though her humiliation were transformed by the very strength of her spirit. Her body was used as a spectacle, but her presence remained sovereign. She was humiliated, yes, but she was never diminished. And it was this contrast, this unbearable tension, that made her ordeal so unforgettable. For how could one not feel torn? To look upon her suffering was to ache with pity, to burn with anger, to tremble with admirance, and yet to feel desire still. For her radiance did not vanish. If anything, it grew sharper, more poignant, a flame glowing in the ashes of shame. She was fragile and powerful, humiliated and untouchable, broken and unbroken, all at once. The court, in its cruelty, thought to strip her of dignity, but what they revealed instead was the truth of her sensuality, that it was not in her perfection, not in her untouchable beauty, but in her ability to endure, to remain luminous even when cast into shadow. Her allure deepened, sharpened by sorrow, gilded by endurance. For desire is not always born of triumph. Sometimes it blooms in suffering, in the trembling of a lip that refuses to cry, in the curve of a back that bears more weight than it should, in the strength of silence when words would only wound. And so the people of Defed, even as they mocked her, even as they placed their weight upon her back, could not help but feel the contradiction within themselves. Their scorn was tangled with awe, their laughter with unease, their cruelty with a secret, unspoken admiration. For no matter how they tried to debase her, she remained more radiant than they could ever be. Puig, too, was torn. His love for her had not died, yet doubt gnawed at him, sharp and relentless. He had not accused her himself, but he had not defended her with the fire she deserved. His silence, his hesitation, cut deeper than any punishment the court devised. And though his heart ached as he watched her suffer, he did not break the chains of judgment that bound her. He, too, was complicit in her humiliation, not out of malice, but out of fear. And perhaps that was the cruelest wound of all.
Rhiannon endured. Day after day she bent beneath the weight of others, her back aching, her body weary, her soul heavy with sorrow. Yet she carried more than their bodies. She carried the weight of slander, the burden of lies, the crushing judgment of a world too small to comprehend her. And in her endurance she became something greater than victim, greater than queen. She became legend. For what is legend, if not beauty tested by cruelty? What is myth, if not desire forged in the fires of suffering? Rhiannon's story does not survive because of her perfection. It survives because of her endurance, because of the way her sensual grace did not vanish, even when cloaked in humiliation. She became the embodiment of a paradox, fragile yet unyielding, shamed yet radiant, mortal in her suffering yet divine in her dignity. And so the climax of her story is not the loss of her child, nor even the cruelty of her punishment. The true climax lies in the image of her kneeling, of her bowed back, of her eyes lifted in quiet defiance, of her sensual presence refusing to be erased. It lies in the ache that rises in those who hear her tale, the pity, the anger, the admiration, the desire, that all blend together until one can no longer separate them. This is the heart of Rhiannon's myth, not her beauty, not her freedom, not even her love, but her endurance in the face of betrayal, envy, and judgment. The other world gave her grace, but the mortal world gave her pain. And in the marriage of the two, she became unforgettable. To watch her suffering is to understand longing in its rawest form, longing for truth, for freedom, for recognition, longing not only to be desired, but to be believed, longing not only to be seen, but to be understood. And it is this longing, born of humiliation, yet glowing with dignity,
that transforms her from vision to myth, from goddess to legend, from woman to eternal flame. For Rhiannon, bent beneath the weight of strangers, never ceases to be Rhiannon. She is fragile, she is humiliated, she is wronged, but she is also radiant, sensual, sovereign. She is desire itself, both wounded and enduring. And in her one sees not only sorrow, but the terrible, irresistible beauty of survival.
Time, that patient sculptor, moves with hands both cruel and merciful. For seasons passed in Dyfed, and still the queen bore the weight of strangers upon her back. The people who once whispered their envy in shadows laughed openly now, their mockery untempered by pity. Rhiannon endured, her grace undimmed, her spirit unbroken, until the very cruelty meant to destroy her became the forge of her legend. And yet truth, though buried, does not sleep forever. Far from the halls of Dyfed, a child grew, found in mysterious circumstance, nurtured by hands not his mother's. The boy bore the unmistakable mark of his birthright. His beauty was undeniable, his presence otherworldly, and with time, as fate wound its inevitable path, the lost son was returned. He was brought before the court, carried on strong arms, his face radiant with the light of recognition. The hall fell silent. The murmurs, once sharp with accusation, withered on trembling tongues, for there, before them, stood the child they had sworn Rhiannon had devoured, alive, whole, proof undeniable that she had been wronged, that her punishment had been borne in innocence. The revelation struck like lightning. Guilt and shame fell heavy upon those who had condemned her, yet their remorse could not erase the cruelty already inflicted. Their laughter, their jeers, their indifference to her suffering, all lay exposed now, not as justice, but as betrayal. And in the stillness that followed, all eyes turned to her. Rhiannon, who had knelt beneath their weight, rose. She stood tall, the curve of her shoulders regal, her gaze unflinching. There was no triumph in her face, no gloating in her silence. She did not lash out, did not spit venom upon those who had wronged her. Instead, she carried herself with the quiet majesty of one who has transcended vengeance. Her strength lay not in striking back, but in enduring, in standing unbroken where others would have been shattered. And in that moment, she became untouchable. For what punishment could ever mark her now? What insult could wound one who had borne the greatest humiliation with grace? She emerged from her suffering not diminished, but magnified. Her allure, once radiant, was now sharpened by sorrow, deepened by resilience. She was no longer merely the goddess-like vision on a white horse. She was a woman of flesh and pain, of endurance and scars. And it was this union of divinity and humanity that made her irresistible. The people who once mocked her now looked upon her with reverence. Their desire for her did not vanish. It grew, twisted now with admiration, pity, longing, and awe. For she was not simply beautiful, she was unbreakable. She had carried her shame like a crown, had walked through fire, and emerged clothed in its light. Will, her husband, was perhaps the most shaken of all. He too had failed her, not with cruelty, but with silence, with hesitation, with the weight of his doubt. And now, confronted with the truth, he felt both relief and anguish. Relief that his beloved had been innocent all along. Anguish that he had not trusted her completely, that he had not defended her with the fire she deserved. He looked upon her as one might look upon a star glimpsed after a storm, grateful for its return, yet humbled by the memory of its absence. Rhiannon, however, did not turn her gaze upon him with scorn. She did not wield her suffering as a weapon against him. Instead, she carried it with dignity, allowing the silence between them to speak louder than accusation. In her eyes there was both forgiveness and distance, both tenderness and strength. She loved him still, but her love was no longer the same. It was deeper, scarred, touched by sorrow. And in that transformation, it became something more powerful than before. For scars are not merely wounds, they are stories written upon the body, reminders of survival. And Rhiannon's scars, though invisible, glowed within her presence, adding layers to her allure. No longer could she be dismissed as a dream, a vision untouchable. She was now both goddess and woman, untamed yet wounded, radiant yet marked by pain. And it was this paradox that made her unforgettable. Her restoration did not erase her suffering. It did not undo the humiliation of bent knees, of laughter heavy on her back, but it transformed that suffering into legend. In her silence, she spoke of endurance. In her poise, she declared that no lie could erase truth. In her radiance, she revealed that beauty was not fragile, but resilient, that desire could survive even the harshest storms.
And so Rhiannon's place was restored. She reclaimed her seat beside Pool, her crown upon her brow, her child in her arms. Yet she was no longer the same woman who had ridden forth from the other world on her white horse. That Rhiannon was untouched, a vision of mystery. This Rhiannon was something greater, touched by sorrow, shaped by betrayal, elevated by resilience. Her sensuality, too, deepened. No longer was it only in her grace, her beauty, her otherworldly allure. It now lived in her strength, in the way her body remembered humiliation, yet carried itself with majesty, in the way her eyes reflected both tenderness and sorrow. To desire her now was to desire not a dream, but a reality forged in pain and endurance. And the people, whether they admitted it or not, desired her still, perhaps even more. For there is an intoxicating allure in resilience, in beauty that survives cruelty, in dignity that endures humiliation. Rhiannon became not only queen, not only lover, but symbol of endurance, of sovereignty, of the dangerous, irresistible union of grace and strength. Yet even in restoration, scars linger. Though her child was returned, though her innocence proclaimed, the memory of her punishment remained etched in the fabric of the kingdom. And within her too it lived, an ache that never fully faded, a reminder of betrayal too sharp to forget. But rather than diminishing her, it gave her depth. She was no longer flawless, no longer untouched. She was real, and in that reality lay her greatest power. For myths endure not because their figures are perfect, but because they are human in their trials, divine in their endurance. Rhiannon, restored yet scarred, became the embodiment of this truth. She was no longer only the goddess-like rider of the other world. She was also the woman who bore false judgment, who endured cruelty, who rose again luminous. She was both fragile and untouchable, desired and revered, wounded and triumphant. And so the tale, in its outcome, does not offer simple closure. It does not erase her suffering, nor pretend it did not shape her. Instead, it crowns her with it. Rhiannon emerges not as victim, but as legend. Not as one broken by cruelty, but as one transfigured by it. She is more untouchable now than when first she rode into the mortal realm, yet also more human, more intimate, more real. For to love Rhiannon is not to love a flawless vision. It is to love a woman who has endured, who has carried humiliation with grace, who has been wounded and yet shines brighter for it. It is to desire not only her beauty, but her scars. And that is why she lingers, not only in myth, but in memory.
Listen closely, for myths do not end the way mortal stories do. They do not close their doors, nor tie their threads neatly into bows. Myths breathe. They linger, like the hush of mist over water, like a dream that clings to your skin long after you wake. And Rhiannon, queen, lover, mother, accused, radiant, lingers more than most. She does not leave us with triumph alone, nor sorrow alone. She leaves us with paradox, with beauty that has been wounded, with endurance that has been humiliated, with desire that has been misunderstood. And it is in this paradox that her legend finds its eternal pulse. Think of her not only as the woman who rode a white horse from the other world, her gown gleaming like dawn, her hair flowing like a dark river. Think of her also as the woman bent beneath the weight of mockery, her body bowed but her spirit burning. Think of her as both goddess and human, both untouchable and scarred. For to love her is to love both the luminous vision and the enduring truth. Her story whispers of the fragility of desire, how quickly admiration turns to envy, how swiftly beauty becomes suspicion. Rhiannon was adored, and for that adoration she was punished. She was desired, and for that desire she was slandered. Such is the way of mortals, to long for what they do not understand, and when it cannot be owned, to wound it instead. And yet she teaches us this, that truth endures beyond slander,
that dignity survives even when dragged through dust. Her punishment did not erase her radiance, it revealed it. For what is beauty if it shatters at the first blow? True beauty, sensual and eternal, is that which endures suffering, which carries scars like jewels, which survives humiliation and still glows. Rhiannon endured, and in her endurance she became more than goddess, more than queen. She became symbol, a symbol of feminine strength, not the loud strength of battle, but the quiet strength of survival, the kind that bears weight in silence, that holds its poise when stripped of dignity, that refuses to vanish even when the world demands it. She teaches that sensuality is not weakness, that beauty is not fragility, that desire is not sin. These are powers, and powers feared are always attacked.
Her endurance whispers to every woman whose voice has been doubted, whose body has been judged, whose truth has been swallowed by lies. She is the embodiment of survival against the tide of slander, of grace carried through shame. She does not tell us the world is kind. She tells us we can be stronger than its cruelty. And yet, she remains sensual, radiant. For there is no purity in denying the body, no strength in severing desire. Rhiannon is not remembered because she turned away from sensuality. She is remembered because she embodied it, because even bowed beneath mockery, even stripped of dignity, her aura was irresistible. She revealed that sensuality is not fragile decoration, but the essence of survival itself, a flame that even humiliation cannot extinguish. When you think of her, do not imagine perfection. Imagine scars woven into grace. Imagine longing wrapped around strength. Imagine desire, misunderstood and maligned, yet enduring. That is Rhiannon. And yet, she does not give herself to us fully. She does not allow herself to be completely known. She remains, even now, elusive, a whisper on the wind, a shimmer in the mist. She does not step into the light of explanation. She remains half in shadow, half in dream. For myths, to endure, must always withhold. They must leave us yearning. And so Rhiannon leaves us yearning still. Yearning to understand her, yearning to comfort her, yearning to desire her without wounding her, yearning even to kneel at her side and bear her scars with her. This yearning is her gift, her power, her eternal presence. For desire that is satisfied fades, but desire that is never fully answered burns forever. She speaks to us not in shouts, but in whispers. Her voice is the rustle of mist in the morning, the hush of waves against the shore, the sigh of a lover in the dark. She does not demand, she invites. She does not command, she lingers waiting for us to listen, to feel. And what does she whisper? Perhaps this: do not fear being misunderstood. Do not shatter beneath judgment. Endure, and you will be greater than the cruelty of others. Perhaps this: desire is not shame. Sensuality is not weakness. They are the essence of life, of beauty, of survival. Or perhaps she whispers nothing at all, only allows her presence to settle in our hearts like an ache, like a memory that feels older than time. Even now, centuries after her name first breathed upon the lips of poets, she is not gone. She is not finished. She rides still in dreams across the meadows of the other world, her white horse carrying her silently through mist. She endures in every woman who has borne lies with dignity, in every soul who has carried scars with grace. She endures in every whisper that says beauty and strength are not opposites, but twins, bound together. And perhaps that is the truest gift of her myth, not simply the story of a queen wronged and restored, but the sense of her presence lingering, half felt, half known. She is not only remembered, she is experienced. Not only told, she is felt. Close your eyes. Listen. Do you feel it? The hush of her voice, soft against your ear, like breath. The trace of sorrow, sweetened by dignity. The shimmer of sensuality, wrapped in endurance. She is there, not in words, but in sensation. In the ache she leaves behind, in the longing she awakens. That is why she endures, not because she was perfect, but because she was paradox. Not because she was flawless, but because she bore scars. Not because she gave herself fully, but because she withheld, leaving us always reaching, never grasping. And so the myth does not close. It lingers. It curls into your chest, into the secret places where longing lives. Rhiannon is not fully known. She is only felt. She is not fully understood. She is only desired. And that is her eternal truth. That beauty mixed with sorrow, sensuality entwined with strength, endurance bound with mystery, these do not die. They live in whispers, in yearning, in silence. They live in the places where words fail and only feeling remains. So when you hear the rustle of mist at dawn, when you glimpse a white horse vanishing into fog, when you feel a sorrow that is also strangely beautiful, know this: Rhiannon is near. Not to be grasped, not to be held, but to be felt. She is never fully known. She is only whispered, only longed for, only remembered as a flame that flickers at the edge of vision, never consumed, never gone. And perhaps that is the truest ending of all, that she has no ending, that she lingers, that she rides on.